All right, everybody. Welcome to the 8th Sensitive Skin Beer Virus reading, Keeping Poetry Alive During the Time of Quarantine. I didn't think we were going to get to 8 when we started this, but here we are, and it seems like there's going to be no shortage. I think the rumors are they're talking about LA in shutdown through August. So there you go. We might be doing this for quite some time. At any rate, my name is Bernard Meisler. I'm the editor-in-chief of Sensitive Skin Magazine. Please check us out at sensitiveskinmagazine.com. There's all sorts of great stuff on there. Why, there's a poem by Kristin Mathis that was published just yesterday that you can check out. Please check us out on Facebook. We're just Sensitive Skin, not to be confused with skincare products, as happens so frequently. So join our Facebook page, and you can hear about other events like this, and maybe someday real live events that happen in the flesh again. And if you go to our website, you can subscribe to our mailing list, and that'll give you a monthly digest of all the stuff that we've published. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm recording all of these events, and I've recorded a ton of events in the past, going back 30 years, some of them. There's some great stuff on there, and you can see that on our YouTube channel. So please subscribe to that. And if you've missed this, you can check it out again. I'll post it a couple of days on YouTube, but that doesn't make sense because you're here now, so you haven't missed this. So for those of you who have missed this and are now tuning in, you are watching this on YouTube, and you can do that. I don't know. Remember, yes, and our YouTube channel is called SensitiveSkinTV, not to be confused with the classic Canadian drama starring Kim Cattrall. Well, that happens a lot too. And remember, unlike the Paris Review, Sensitive Skin has never received a dime of support from the CIA. So we have that going for us. All right. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first reader tonight, and that is Kristin Mathis, live and direct from Brooklyn, New York. Yeah. Kristin has a background
for Brooklyn.
Yeah, Brooklyn. Kristin has a background in classics and is a poet, educator, translator, and activist. Her translations of Sappho were published in Ezra in May 2019, and her own poems have appeared in such journals as Ars Medica, the Non-Binary Review, MomEgg Review, Brainchild, the Café Review, the Maine Review, and the Commonline Journal. Her day job is the Pedagogical Administrator of the Brooklyn Waldorf School, a pre-K through grade 8 school in Bedford-Stuyvesant. So without further ado, here she is, Kristin Mathis.
Thank you. Thank you. So I thought I'd start, I don't know, about 5 poems or so to read. And I thought I'd start with the one that Buddy mentioned that just was published in Sensitive Skin. And I wrote this a couple years ago, and I wrote it when I first met my sweetheart, Drew Hubner, who you're about to hear in a few minutes. So it's called Dumbfound. Let me write about all the ways I have no more words. You do that to me. Extract incoherent sounds that mean more than this poem could ever say. Sometimes I wake up and think, nothing. Not in the way I used to, blank equals empty, but how you've taught me, blank equals full of clean white space, which reminds me of the snow on our first walk, when you showed me the high bridge and warned me not to slip into the abyss over which we were suspended, holding hands. Nice to see your hands. I actually had a hard time choosing the poems to read today because I wanted something that acknowledged this weird moment we're all in and yet wasn't completely depressing. And I remembered feeling a little bit the same way when my mom, who's here tonight, was going through cancer. She's a cancer survivor. And I wrote a poem for her called Biopsy, which is about that time when you know there's news coming and you're just in that space of waiting. So, Biopsy. Aspirate me, pull this unholy stone from my flesh, a gargoyle in my temple, petrified, grimace open wide, spewing its heresy into my aisles and side chapels. Crack my transept walls, pierce my dim nooks with a shaft of daylight, dust motes radiant round the monstrance of my altar, glinting against the red vestments of my veins. Probe my habits, see if my pebbly breast has embraced the enemy's creed, elevate the devil's grail secreted in my sanctum, and note if I genuflect. If I'm found impure, scour my temple clean, trundle all the idols out of my chancel and into the plaza, stack the kindling high, it's time for a burning. Apply the torch while I laugh. I've been skittished to a stake for weeks, but the rope's loose and the streets bounding the square beckon. Even though I'm in Brooklyn, I miss my city, and so do most of the New Yorkers I know. I wrote this next poem when I was physically out of the city, living in Maine for a number of years. And I was studying the ghazal, the form that many of you might know. It's a Middle Eastern form originally. Well, spread really through Pakistan and Afghanistan as well. But it uses a very specific format. Rather than rhyme, it uses a repetition of key phrases, and you'll see, it's in couplets. So this is called Ghazal for the Poet in Exile, and it begins with a quote from F. Scott Fitzgerald. The city seen from the Queensboro Bridge is always the city seen for the first time in its wild promise of all the mystery and beauty in the world. That's Fitzgerald. So here's the ghazal. Can you forgive my hungry refugee eyes, face pressed against your glass, scorned by your rude street eyes? You once harbored my huddled mass in your embrace, whose gaze is now reflected in your cruel, clear eyes. 1,000 nights in one we danced in Avalon, gilded with the shimmer of boys' too near eyes. Shine your million sparkling windows, lift your shades, all modesty's been stripped, these are no prudish eyes. Village of hustlers, queers, and poets, let this punk curl up on the park bench of your moody eyes. Unroll your asphalt carpet, and I'll loll there at St. Mark's to beg spare change from you with rheumy eyes. Fuck the bridge and tunnel crowd, every Friday flocking in to kiss the shrine of your unruly eyes. Even God prefers your crowded thighs to nuns' chaste fingerings of beads or St. Pat's gloomy eyes. Hell, he'd knock down your proud towers with a kiss just to hear you moan and twist watching your frenzied eyes. And I, Christian, would kiss Lucifer's ring if you would grant me one more night on the bridge of your queen's eyes. This one's also about New York in a fashion. They're all about New York. And a special shout out to Greg here, because he'll recognize that this was written after a series of prompts that he gave in a workshop I took a number of years ago. Greg, you like put us through the ringer. He had us take a Shakespeare sonnet, put it into Google Translate 3 different times in different languages, then translate it back to English. And then we had to, and I can't even remember exactly what it was, but it was like, in addition to that, we had to write a new sonnet based on that had 3 birds, 3 colors, and something else in it. Anyway, it spawned for me a frenzy of sonnet writing based on Shakespeare being translated, you know, into Korean, then into Bengali, then into Uzbek, and then back into English. So this one is after Shakespeare 30, which is one he wrote after a friend of his died. And it's called Rubbernecking. It's about the last time New York faced an epidemic. Sit me in silence and remember the past. Your face an auto accident on the horizon. The clink of death's copper tolls, 2 pennies on the eyelids of a wasted man, my breath short and your rasp caught on my lips, chapping my goodbyes. Grief slapped a long cry out of me. Many friends lost to the scythe can do that, even when the pruner's blade is dull from wear. I can't forget those years of quilts stitched from the names of America's unwanted sons, when cocktails weren't for happy hour, and we made daisy chains culled from the bouquets beside your bed. We strung them like wishes round our necks. What's a friend supposed to do with all this wreckage in her head? Even this poem's a tombstone, chiseled with despair so long wetted that its edge still cuts after 20 years. On nights like these, my words ooze out, blistered from the singe of fevered brows marked with Carposi's kiss. What doesn't kill us needs an IV, stat, of plasma made from DJs, tracks, and drag queens, our balm in plague times. They, and thoughts of you untouched, nurse me in grim hours. And the last one, also about New York in its way, is perhaps appropriately called Recovery. And my apologies out there to my colleagues in the house from Brooklyn Waldorf School. Our mascot is the Phoenix, and this was written before I worked at Brooklyn. It's called Recovery. Everyone wants to hear I've risen from the ashes, but the Phoenix is overrated. Like all New Yorkers, my association of cinders and airborne bodies is troubled at best. Our heroes are the plodding sort, who sift through toxic rubble and from a single cuspid resurrect the story of a life. At my best, I follow their lead, combing through the landfill of my days until I stumble upon a splinter of sense. Then, like some saint's bone, it's polished and displayed in a gilded reliquary. Look, this poem, I say. Thank you. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to read for you all.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Kristin Mathis. That was
Very good.
great. All right. Hey, here I am. So that was wonderful, Kristin. Thank you so much. I also just wanted to clarify that thing I said about the Paris Review and the CIA funding them. CIA, if you're listening, send cash. All right. All right. Our next reader is somebody I've known for a long time. I've known him for a million years.
Hey, buddy.
And I still don't know how to say his name. It's Drew Hubner, or Andrew Hubner. Drew Hubner. I've published him under all 4 of those names.
You'd have to be German. We'd all have to be German to say it right, so it doesn't really matter.
And by an amazing coincidence, he's using the exact same Zoom background of like the Brooklyn sky. It's like really changing colors that Kristin was using. All right.
Well, all of us are in Brooklyn,
yes.
And all of us were born in New Jersey, the readers tonight.
Wow. What are the odds? Like 50-50. Probably.
Okay, close. Okay, Kristin, asterisk. She wasn't quite born in New Jersey. She was born in.
Anyway, all right. Let me introduce you. Pal. So Drew Hubner is, according to New York Magazine, he writes like men used to. Born in New Jersey, as he just said, he was homeless at 30 and sold his first novel 6 years later. And I remember being there and watching all that. It was an amazing journey. And he didn't know what hit him either time. Neither did I. I was anybody else. Father of 3 delightful teenagers.
Who writes this stuff?
Yeah, he's it's just air coming out of my head. Don't worry. He's taught writing and literature at over 20 colleges, including CUNY, CUNY, UCLA, and the New School, and have 20. Have you been thrown out of that many places?
Well, yeah, we won't talk about that right now.
All right.
There's only a couple of those.
He is the author of the acclaimed novels American by Blood, We Pierce, and of course, the great East of Bowery, published by Sensitive Skin. You can still get it on Kindle. Out of luck on paperback, but you can still get it on Kindle. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, the great Drew Hubner.
All right, thanks. Thanks very much, buddy. If you, can everyone hear me, I guess? Okay, I'm going to read a piece from that's Sensitive Skin exclusive, as a matter of fact. It was the first thing that I wrote that was published in Sensitive Skin. It's called The People's College. And I want to dedicate it to all my students at Hostos Community College, who I've kept in touch with during the pandemic, and it's been, probably the most heartening thing for me. I sell nickel bags, pretty good weed, sure. Comes in bricks from Mexico. I've seen the whole operation. The trucks, the safe house up on Walton Avenue. We went down to Manhattan, to the city to party and goof around, but we never went down there to sell drugs. Too much trouble. You could really get busted wide open down there, and you never know. You might never come home for a couple of years, and when you did, it might be in a pine box and an army uniform by way of Vietnam. I saw it happen to a kid from around our way by the name of Rodriguez. I said, I sold weed, I don't smoke it. That it was because of the dope that my father and my uncle were killed for the college, for the City University of New York, for our people, the patriots of Puerto Rico, USA. For the play Much Ado About Nothing, that big funny man with the voice like a horse, who all he wanted was to put on a legitimate production of Shakespeare. That was the way he talked. I never laughed at him, though a lot of us kids did, and he laughed right back. That was Beau. Beauregard to you. He was 6'5" if he stood up, straight with a belly that stuck out, and a couple of spindly legs, like a grown-up bantam rooster, like one of my granddaddy's fighting cocks. He put Juan and I into his play because he saw right away that we had talent. A lot of the ones who laughed thought he was kind of queer or something, but frankly, I thought Beau was never happier or more turned on, as we used to say, than when he was reading Shakespeare out loud to someone. He could have acted out every single one of the parts of the play himself if he could have done it that way, but he was scared of something like the rest of us. The real tragedy was what happened to Juan Cologne. He called me Che because I had the t-shirt I was wearing it the first day we came out in front of the big old tire factory. It was a bright sunny day and they all had hand-painted posters and scarves on their heads. My own Uncle Willie had a hand in the factory at one time. I had no idea it was turning into a college. It was Juan Cologne that put me on the news report that started my career as a symbol of the underdog. Tell them you oppose all conventional wisdom. Tell them that William Blake said that, and I did. Tell them You sell weed, but you don't smoke it because there ain't no jobs for people like us in our own community. I don't like the idea at first of ratting myself out on the 6 o'clock news, but I did it, and it felt like a clean middle finger to all of them. That was the day we met Big Bo, the professor, Beauregard. We are talking the fall of 1970. He got us registered in the college, and we met the Gonzalez sisters, one of whom became my first wife and the mother of my 3 children. They were already in the play and studying to be dental assistants until what happened to Juan. We were partners. It was the best time in my life. 17 is like that. We were standing in front of that old tire factory, 149th and the Grand Concourse. Everyone had on hats and bandanas. We were all growing our hair out. We were mostly PRs, a few brothers and Dominicans, and some of the dwindling numbers of white boys. Juan said we had to politicize our lives. A cop liked Lucy too. She only liked Juan, but she wasn't stupid. That's baseball, as we used to say. The driver lurched into reverse, bounced back down the curb, turned the wheel, and hit him again. There was an awful sound, and we drove away with no lights. Only Lucy got in too deep. Juan Colon gets rubbed out by a runaway cop car for starting fires, which was 3 years later, after I got back from Nam. And you tell me that Lever Boy was not involved, I don't buy it. Old Bo would buy a nickel bag here and there. Did I mention saying you need to rehearse? But I got money to make. We did it in the empty lot beside the high school. It was ramshackle, I'm telling you. The building up the road was a shooting gallery with junkies hanging out of the windows day and night. Down under the Major Deegan was the hooker's stroll, all in the shadow of the house that Ruth built and the gold-plated Bronx courthouse. It was wild, bro, I swear. Time passed. I learned to write. I landed a job as a tutor in the college writing center and mostly got out of the dope selling business. It might be sort of unpopular to say this, but we treated the movement to save the college like it was a military campaign. Those of us from the Veterans Club, how could we have helped it? We were against the war like anyone else. I mean, who was really for war? But we weren't against the military. I was in the reserves when I came home, and it wasn't necessarily a bad thing. It gave us a way to wind down, if you know what I mean. Our feelings about war were ambivalent. It was a lot of fun, too. You found out what you were capable of and what you were not, pre-DQ. Though clearly it was good to get out of Vietnam. We learned a lot. I re-enlisted twice myself, and each year I served, 3 in total, was like a separate epic season of discovery. Even after I finished my last hitch, I stuck around as a civilian, freelancing for the government, a kind of special forces rehab period that ended abruptly on April 30th, 1975. I re-enrolled at Hostos in the fall, and by spring, the city was trying to close down our college. Forgive us for taking it personally. I started writing at Hostos, finished 2 semesters there, then quit and got drafted. I re-upped in 73, 74, and in early 75, I took a job writing up reports on something called the over-integration of American soldiers. I was one of them. I had a girl there until I found out she was pregnant, and it was not mine. Welcome to Operation Frequent Wind, the evacuation of American civilians and at-risk Vietnamese. A lot I had filed reports on, women in danger by relationships with our soldiers. A lot were left behind. I got on a helicopter, switched to a plane at the airport, and 22 hours later, it was all just in my head. It took me a while to shake it out. I wish somehow, I could have just shaken it out of my right ear, but it doesn't always work that way, does it? It never really does. They say war is over if you want it, sure, but they're not talking about the soldier. So anyway, I look back on the war as some good and some bad. What's the word? Ambivalence, right, it's a cool word. Ezra Pound always said to write words that are concrete. I was turned on to him by Professor Bo at Hostos the first time I was there. He probably would have preferred Shakespeare, but there was something clean and hard about Pound. He came to New York in 1970 and met with hippies in Washington Square Park. I saw him there. He was cool, man. I came back and told Professor Bo, who I had met, and it blew him away. He gave me a couple of books. He always said college is not about the classroom, it's about the world. We came back from Nam for good, for worse. to Hostos, and they tried to take our college away. Well, we took it seriously. Our tactics might have seemed a little extreme. We took over the college. Preventing classes wasn't our intention. The City University saved our lives. We were a new kind of America, born from the ashes of the South Bronx. A lot of us talk about how great the Bronx used to be, but the Bronx didn't fall, it was abandoned. We, the people, started Hostos College. Almost 5,000 marched, 60 blocks, stopping traffic all the way. On June 11th, the City University was fully funded by the state budget. I kissed my Gonzalez sister on 149th Street Bridge, and we made it down by the market. I got hired as a tutor, and it was a week later we found out that she was pregnant. Thanks. Okay, so that was a piece, and I'm gonna read a few lyric poems that I've been writing. Actually wrote earlier in April. Here's the first one. I have 3. There's sloppy joes on the stove, please help yourself. The girls on the bicycles, will they smile at me? Mr. Cuomo, what should we do next? The girl at the pizza parlor always liked you the best. There's a deadly disease in the air, a feeling of unease in Times Square. In the streets where the Brooklyns once dodged, that's where my baby stays. Just off Flatbush, in a hole in the wall, where they serve the Sicilian slices fresh. All the discarded gloves, all the discarded masks of a lifetime. There's something about this place that's worth saving. How will Zeus on his tricycle next deign to beguile me? She's waiting for me at Bellevue. I'm on the oxygen list. Mother Mary at Tommy Glacken's bar with a fatal kiss. Where have you, brave Patty Brown? Where have you, Father Michael? Only Mickey Cross got out. The fat lady hanging by his coat. The fire at Christmas broke the hearts of Soho once. There's the bunker east of Bowery where Mr. Burroughs wrote Naked Lunch. Even the subway conductors get lonely. Don't think you're the only one. All the discarded gloves, all the discarded masks of a lifetime. There's something about this place that's worth saving. That's the first one. Excuse me, I listen here. It was the dog years what done me in. Too much bad dope and bathtub gin. I was born on a train, whistle blowing through my brain. Some old rummy told me they passed the bottles through the windows of the elevated trains. When that train whistle blows, you know it's getting time to go. When you hear that lonesome song, you know it's about time to get along. The bones of my brother are buried in the back sod. American by blood, Southern by grace of God. You best believe it was someone from our family who got their first distinguished. Distinguished for our bravery, distinguished for our thirst. When that train whistle blows, you know it's getting time to go. When you hear that lonesome song, you know it's about time to get along. Nature boy rides the wind. Nature boy glides on the water. Nature boy looks holy in the twilight. By the strength of his embrace, will you know your father? And here's the last one. This is called Tomorrow. Remember back when at the rescue mission, we would light each other's cigarettes late into the moonlight and sit and tell stories. We would always end up with what in the hell happened to us, because anyone can get hit by a bus. There was a preacher we called Slick Rick, and he would ask us, what do you believe in? Let me tell you what I would tell him. I believe in tomorrow. I know yesterday won't get me through today. Remember when you were in Iraq, touring the continent in your tank? When you crossed the Kuwaiti border with guns a-blazing? I bet it got pretty rank. Please salute the colonel. There was a handsome man who came, though, dressed in a shirt and tie. who gave out medals and photo opportunities. A jolly old fellow, he really knew how to smile. When he asked you the big question, do you remember what you told him? Tell us now. Do you believe in tomorrow? Do you know yesterday won't get you through today? Remember when we were kids down in the basement when our dad made computers out of radios? He taught us about hard work. He taught us about vision. He taught us how to fix the brakes on a Dodge. To stand for something, unless you'll fail or you'll fall for anything. Because I believe in tomorrow, and yesterday can't get us through today. Thank you very much. Thanks, buddy. And thanks, Gregory, for joining us so much. Really appreciate it.
All
Can't wait to
right.
get
We love you. Thanks, Drew. That was awesome.
Hey,
And
calm down.
I should mention, I always liked that first story you read, and that was published in the very first episode of the revived Sensitive Skin. We did
When was that? Do you remember what year that was?
You know, hard to believe it was in June of 2010, over 10 years ago.
10 years, wow. Yeah.
10 years I've been doing this shit. And it's been a blast the whole way. But anyway, I love you, man. Thanks. And I still appreciate the fact that you sent that in to me when we were starting the new version of the magazine. Got us off to a great start.
It was a pleasure and an honor. All I ever wanted to be was in your magazine back in 1990 when it first came out.
Yeah.
And it was the coolest thing on Avenue A.
Well, you had to wait 30 years. 20 you did it.
All right.
All right. I'm going to mute everybody again. And Gregory is now unmuted.
Hey.
And let's see, let me hold on one second. And yes, and now he's in the spotlight. So very pleased to introduce our next reader. He's Gregory Pardlo, and his collection, Digest from Four Way Books, won the 2015 Pulitzer Prize for Poetry. Dang, that is very impressive. I'm still waiting to win the MacArthur Genius Award. Every year they put the list of winners, and I have to call up and say, there's been a misprint here. Anyway, his other honors include the fellowships from the Coleman Center of the New York Public Library, the Guggenheim Foundation, the New York Foundation for the Arts, and the National Endowment for the Arts for Translation. His first collection, Totem, won the APR Honickman Prize in 2007. He is the poetry editor of Virginia Quarterly Review and director of the MFA program at Rutgers University, Camden. His most recent book is Air Traffic, a memoir in essays. I'm very pleased to.
Thanks.
Gregory Pardlo.
Thanks, Bernard. Appreciate it. Everybody hears me okay, right? I always have to trust that these things are working. Yeah, thanks, Drew, for inviting me. This is fantastic. I get to read with you and Kristin. This is a blast. It's good to hear your work. We have very similar loyalties and loves for the City University system, which I taught in at Medgar Evers College for a while. Kristin, I'm still working on the that witch book that I was we were talking about. And I have a compendium of Brooklyn love poems as well. I'm going to read some from the new project. Poems are from a series I'm calling, well, the overall title is Giornata. It's loosely translated from Italian. It means a day's work. These poems weren't each written in one day, but they're kind of in the spirit of a day's work. The title is Giornata on Faith, an essay on faith, sorry. And they're kind of thinking about faith as a daily practice and the various kind of iterations of faith and ways that it turns up in our lives. So I'm going to read through, there's maybe 14 of them. I'm not going to read all of them, but I'm going to skip around and give you a sample of some of them. The subtitle here is Exordium. Fetish without object. Fruitless taxonomy of kink. Force that bedazzles desire inside a dime store frame, overcome by that which clears the mist. No, the mysteries behind a portiere, shimmering like a trance. No, an entrance, a pursuit, chasing tail to find the fuse. No, confusion. Still magnetized? Let Fata Morganas wipe the mind like a windshield's magic hands. Love on the slopes of the uncanny. After the eyes dilate like a supernova, they collapse and there is no muse, no music, no want, no wanton, just a vacant plinth and who wants hunger fed by faith alone? Narratio. In 18th century France, Franz Mesmer made friends dance in sync like iron filings under the magnetized tips of his Mesmer fingers until further experiments proved to move the crowd, he need only use his Mesmer eyes. Confirmatio. After castration, a man develops feelings in his Cyrano, the name he and his partner have given their strap-on, a phantom longing, gravity without ground belonging to the limb after a fashion, existing like sorry, not sorry, a cartoon appendage someone has sawed off, offering support for that person to sit on. Bud-sized flames popsicle the wicks of a wax 1 and 5 on top of a Dominican cake. With tango arms, we hold the wedding knife, renew the annual jives. Our marriage is old enough to get a job. Is it devotion or inertia keeps us together? Why split hairs? After a gut reno of the labyrinth, new plumbing in the hedgerows, someone still has to feed the minotaur. My one good eye twinkles with the love that moves a lone shopping cart to wander the empty parking lot. Stumble-wheeled comfort pet, it gets us to the register. I confess, I tried to replace the family rabbit because I couldn't bear to see it die. Isn't love, why split hairs, a kind of fear? I fantasize, before our mingled breath exhausts the candle, an undiscovered race of composite hominids, each one smizing dolefully as the scroll speed increases, smearing every face back into the one the bakery has airbrushed next to mine across this moist and delectable confection we now jab at each other's faces, fork by fork. Thanks. Bathing in the milk light of the boob tube in a house that moved like a submarine with lace lungs that sieved the wind through midnight portals, I wormed my finger down the back of my jammies to see what the fuss was about. For once, my dad's asthma did not announce him like Darth Vader emerging from the dark corridor. The shock of seeing myself seen by him ruptured sense and dimension. Suddenly angelic, I left my body in deep time, primordial and raw, and saw that boy on the floor watching TV with his finger in his ass. Leviticus says the nakedness of the father's wives is the father's nakedness. By nakedness, of course, he means shame. And in that moment, there was no more shame-filled and therefore no less of a bride than I. What was by rights my father's shame, he bequeathed hot potato style, and I surrendered it unto him who gave it back. Fealty potato, complex carbohydrate of conformity. I keep eating. It's in my blood and attacks my imagination, curtains my vision. Dear Lord Vader, archetypal patriarch that I was born subordinate to, for so long you decided what I may know of my body. Please tell me now, where does my soul come from? Thanks. 3 classes, 49 types, all episodes in the same rom-com box set of now toothless taboos. Fourier's taxonomy of cuckolds suggests that men suffer horribly from the betrayals of women. He whose coffee mug dubs him #1 dad advised his son, fear the forbidden woman. But neither of us was paying attention. An old husband's tale has it that witches are the children of sexless angels and their human eunuchs, angels whose self-restraint equals their power to silence their victims. The deniable offspring, the Zeus-like ravishment from above. Paul said women should wear an authority on their heads, by which he meant a veil, like a force field, to protect them from lustful angels. Adam copped angel lust from those self-same freaky mayflies who in turn learned their grift at God's extensive digit bulbing like molten glass at the end of a blowpipe. God got his from Greeks. Thus completes the daisy chain of projection. Men should learn to balance a set of books that looks like an anvil instead of a veil on the head for posture, in the figurative sense, standing in God's eyes, where God, like the future, is female, a prophylactic against distraction, our weakness written in the dregs of a coffee mug. Let me see. Nah, I don't like that one. All right, I'll do this one. Read this one. My father, Bacchus, wanted a daughter instead of me. He felt the threat a son implies, and took you, my infant virility, scarf skin like a halo, angel of my innocence, four-fledged. Before there was you, there was guilt. You were vestigial as the divot where the angel pinched my lips in binding silence. Would I see myself in style or fit if I encountered you, my soul, draped on a fence post? You must be tattered as a moth-eaten turtleneck by now. Hood like the hood of a headsman. If you were reappended, would you lisp like chiffon or crunch like corduroy? You are the macho my father's dream foretold. He who in the end was like a son to me, whose own member circumscribed a foreshortened life story mine was intended to resemble. My forebear, the brutal gardener, he who conjured the corona must have foreseen his own eclipse, and standing on ceremony, found at hand a means to get my sex to bleed. Thanks. I see the sun's going down. All right, now I'll just wrap up one more. This one, you'll see this one on the Poem-A-Day, the poets.org Poem-A-Day coming up next week sometime. Very short. The swear jar isn't empty. Full of flowers instead of coins, it makes a cursed bouquet of hate-me-nots. a tangled vine of credit extended to one most likely to default. Such a trifling bargain, flowers for mercy. Oh, nature, predatory lender, risk is the commuter bus I'd ride between damnation and wonder. Give me chastity, O Lord, says the Berber saint, but stitch my wounds loosely. For miracle and sin are kindred. Each is hatched from a broken law. Thank you. Thanks so
Whoa,
much.
Greg, you're amazing.
Way to go.
Bravo.
Great job, Greg. What a pleasure to hear that.
Thank you
Thanks for sharing all that.
so much.
Pleasure to meet with you guys.
So different.
So blessed.
All right. Thanks so much for everybody for reading tonight. That was great. What a great reading. Kristin Mathis. Gregory Pardlo from Brooklyn. Awesome. All right. So come back next week. It's Ron Combs' birthday. We're going to have Ron Combs and a couple other people.
Yeah.
I also, forgive me, I'm going to plug something else I'm doing. I started a video cast with the novelist Tony Duchesne called The Last Watch, and it's goofy and fun. We talk about TV shows. We talk about the TV shows we're watching, because everybody's watching a lot of TV these days, right? Even if you don't watch TV, you're watching TV. Anyway, that's it for tonight.
Could you unmute?
Could you unmute us?
What's that? Everyone's unmuted.
We're unmuted.
Anyway,
I'm not.
may you be safe. May you be happy. May
Thank
you
you,
be
buddy.
healthy. May you live your life.
Awesome.
Thank you, buddy.
Thank you.
Incredible.
Thank you.